When sound waves propagate in a fluid in a pipe, the waves are reflected from the ends and a standing wave can be produced. For a fixed end of a pipe, that means that when the pipe is stopped or blocked, then the displacement of the particles has to be zero, and because the particles are stuck on the fixed end. And this corresponds to a node in displacement. And if you remember the relation between pressure fluctuations and displacement, this means that the pressure fluctuation is at a maximum or a minimum. So it corresponds to a pressure node. And on the other hand, for an open pipe, when the pipe is open to the atmosphere, so the pressure is at the atmospheric pressure and there are no fluctuations of pressure, so the pressure fluctuation is at a node. And the displacement, on the other hand, is at an antinode. Most detectors detect pressure fluctuations. So our ears, they detect pressure fluctuations. And so if we hear no sound, it means that we are at the position of the pressure node, which corresponds, in fact, to a displacement antinode. Now, the mouth from the pipe, where the musician will blow the air, is also an open end. So it will correspond to a pressure node or also a displacement antinode. Now, in this video, we will show that the standing sound waves in a pipe have the frequencies which can be calculated by these two formulas. One is for an open pipe, and the frequency is NV over 2L, where N is an integer number. And for a stopped pipe, we have NV over 4L, where N is an odd integer. And in these relations, V is the speed of sound and L is the length of the pipe. So let's start with the case for an open pipe. For example, that would be for a flute. We have the mouth of the pipe on the left and the open end on the right. We've already mentioned that the mouth corresponds to an open end, so the pipe is open on both sides. So if I represent the displacement, by the way, remember that for a longitudinal wave, the displacement y is along the axis of propagation. Right? Don't confuse y here with the vertical axis. So looking at the displacement, I have a displacement maximum or minimum on both ends. And so for the first harmonic, it will correspond to the case where the length of the pipe is equal to half a wavelength. If you prefer, we can also plot the pressure fluctuations. For the pressure fluctuations, the open ends corresponds to pressure nodes. So we have a node on both sides. And again, you see that L is equal to lambda over 2. Let's say that we look at the second harmonic. In this case, looking at the displacement, I will have an additional antinode in the center and two nodes, one at 1/4 and one at 3/4 of the length of the pipe. And so the length of the pipe is equal to 1 full wavelength, or in terms of half wavelengths, 2 lambda over 2. We can also look at the pressure fluctuations. When there is an antinode of displacement, then there will be a node of pressure fluctuations. And when there is a node of displacement, there is an antinode of pressure fluctuations. Again, you see that the length is equal to 1 wavelength. We can continue and look at the third harmonic. In this case, again, looking at the displacement, we have one more antinode and a total of 3 nodes of displacement. And you can count that the length of the pipe here in this case is equal to 3 half wavelengths. And again, if you look at the pressure fluctuations, now you will see 3 pressure antinodes at the positions of the displacement nodes. And we can continue with the next harmonic and so on, but you see that the length will be equal to an integer times lambda over 2. So the wavelengths that are possible are given by lambda equal 2L over n. And since the frequency is V over lambda, then the frequencies of the normal modes are NV over 2L. By the way, this is the second time that we get this, right? Remember, we already found the same result for a string. For a string with a fixed end on both sides, the normal modes are the same as for a pipe that is open on both sides, right? It's the same formula, and this is normal because for a string we have nodes of displacement at the fixed ends, and for an open pipe we have nodes, this time of pressure fluctuations, on both sides. So in both cases, the frequencies of the normal modes are the same, and they are NV over 2L. All right, so that is giving us the formula for an open pipe. Now let's look at the stopped pipe. So for a stopped pipe, for example, a clarinet or even the auditory canal or the vocal tracts, we will have one side open, so there will be a displacement antinode or a pressure node, and one side stopped with which will be a displacement node or a pressure antinode. The first drawing that you can do is simply to have only one node and one antinode at the ends. Right? In this case, you see that the length of the pipe corresponds to just a quarter of a wavelength, so lambda over 4. The next possibility is to add one node inside the pipe, and in this case, the length of the pipe will be 3/4 of a wavelength. And the next step is to have two nodes inside the pipe. In this case, you see that we have one full wavelength plus 1/4, so the length is 5/4. And we can continue again with more and more nodes, and you see that the length of the pipe will correspond to n lambda over 4, where n is an odd integer, right? N is equal to 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on. So the wavelengths that are possible are given by 4L over n. And the normal mode frequencies, which are given by V over lambda, will be equal to NV over 4L. And that gives us the formula for the normal modes on a stopped pipe. You see that the fundamental frequencies, which corresponds to n equal 1, is V over 2L for an open pipe and V over 4L for a stopped pipe. Right? So for the same length, a stopped pipe has the fundamental frequency, which is half the frequency compared with an open pipe. So let's see if you can hear that. I have a big wooden open pipe, and I'm using a blower to create standing waves in the pipe. I use a big book to block one end. So with the book, it's like a stopped pipe, and when I remove the book, then it's an open pipe. Can you hear the fundamental frequency is lower for the stopped pipe compared to the open pipe? Okay, thank you. You can stop now. Okay, thank you. Okay, okay, let's move on. I should add that for organ pipes, several modes are always present. Right? You don't have just the normal mode with n equal 1, but you have all the other modes with the other values of n. And this is called the harmonic content. Right? Narrow pipes are rich in higher harmonics, whereas fatter pipes contain mostly the fundamental mode. Right? And if you don't remember why, then check again the video on sound intensity. Also, the harmonic content depends on the shape of the pipe's mouth, right? By the way, the mouth of the pipe is very important to create this particular harmonic content, right? This is here my favorite whistle. I got it at the Sacramento Railroad Museum. And the mouth has been specially designed to mimic the harmonic content of the sound from a train whistle, right? So by the way, they don't sell a lot of those at the museum, right? Only two kinds of people buy them, kids and apparently physics professors. Now let's talk about the vocal track. The vocal track is like a stopped pipe. So the normal modes have frequencies of the form NV over 4L. And you see that the frequencies of the normal modes depend on the speed of sound. In air, the speed of sound is 344 meters per second. But if you replace air by helium, then the speed of sound in helium is larger, right? In helium, the speed of sound is almost 1,000 meters per second. So the frequencies from our vocal tract are larger, and this is why people have a high-pitched voice when they fill their vocal tracts with helium.
All right, here we go, right?
Do you ever want to go to space?
I really shouldn't be doing this.
It's helium. It's helium, Morgan. It is helium.
It's very undignified.
No. I think your voice sounds great. It's not undignified.
Some people just have voices like this, so you're actually making fun of those people. See? I told you. I want to thank you so much for being on the show, and please, would you ever like to come back?
I'm never coming back.
Morgan Freeman.